It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
So when it comes to building and specifically growing your net worth, we think there are really three distinct ways to do that. And that's what we're going to walk through with you. What are the three ways that you can grow your net worth? And the first one is pretty easy. It's the one that I think most people get excited about. It is increase your assets. Add to the asset side of the equation for you.
Bo, this sounds like a Captain Obvious statement. Well, of course, if we add to our assets. But I want to go a little deeper into this, is that how do we actually turn this into what is going to be the primary driver for the typical person's annual asset growth?
Yeah, so when you go and do your net worth statement and you're adding into it, most folks, the way that you see that grow year over year is through your savings.
Yep.
The dollars that you are understanding where you're going to defer gratification, put money into your portfolio to grow for you, and you see your investment accounts go up due to savings. That's the number one way that most people increase their assets on their annual net worth.
Now, when you say savings, we're of course also talking about investing.
Sure,
we use those terms sometimes interchangeably, but before I even talk about the investing of that money, I think we have to say, what are our peers doing? Because we have some benchmarks or some guidelines that we tell everyone that they need to aspire and even focus on getting ASAP. But what does the typical American actually save?
Yeah, so there was a study done by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis that looked at U.S. savings rates from 2010 all the way through the end of 2021. And this is what they found. The average savings rate since 2010 is only about 8.5%. And if you're out there listening to this as a podcast and you can't see the visual on the screen right now, I think that's actually artificially inflated because of COVID. I think when people were at home during the pandemic, savings rates really jumped up super high. It looks like the average is really probably closer to a little bit better than maybe 7%, somewhere in that range.
When you look at this visual, and I'm doing this for all the audio listeners, it's pretty standard. I mean, it's got a few ups and downs, but it's pretty flat to a degree. It's ranging between, looks like 6 to 8%. But then in 2020, when no one could leave their house, savings rates went through the roof. And so you can say, wow, that's great. No, it just means we locked up the American consumer. But don't worry. As soon as we unlock the doors and unlock the economies, it's like Americans like, I got to do my patriotic duty. Let's go spend some money. So, and here's the thing. You see 8.5% and you go, well, maybe that's healthy. No, here's the thing. We tell everyone, this is not the old adage where if you get to 10%, you'll be okay for the rest of your life. Realize we don't have Social Security like Social Security is just not guaranteed to be there, especially if you're younger people, because that thing's in financial straits in a large part. Pensions, your company, you'll be lucky if you even work for the same company 5 to 6 years in the future. So the fact that you think a pension is going to be provided, they don't exist. They've gone extinct like the dinosaurs. More and more falls on your shoulders. So that's why we recommend that you need to save and invest 20 to 25% of your income, gross income, for the future.
Now, you may be saying, okay, guys, that sounds like a big number. Why do you guys say that? We actually have some numbers to substantiate our 25% goal. So let's assume that you decide to invest your money and you can earn 6% on average over your working career.
Very moderate.
And let's assume that while you're working every year, your pay goes up by about 1.5% a year, and you want to retire at 65.
Yep.
A magical thing happens when you start putting your army of dollar bills to work. If you're a 20-year-old and you start saving 25% of your gross income at 20, by the time that you get to age 65, you could retire and you would be able to replace 167% of your pre-retirement income. That's right. You could get a raise, a significant raise, when you retire if you work all the way until 65.
So 2 disclaimers that I always say when we show this. I love this research that we did, but the reality is we know most people don't save 20 to 25%. Right. They're saving a little over 8% like we talked about. And then unfortunately, most people don't find the Money Guy Show at age 20.
That's right.
It might be 25, it might be 30. So this is why we give you the grace to know that if you are a financial mutant that discovered us at age 20, you could actually lean down closer to that 15 to 20% savings rate because you should be rewarded for jumping in early.
Maybe you have a more traditional path like Brian described and that you don't start saving until you're 25 years old, but that's still pretty early for most. Well, if you start saving 25% starting when you're 25-year-old, by the time you get to retirement, you could actually replace 131% of your pre-retirement income at 65. Again, you get to retire and get a pay raise. Well, then, if you wait until you're 30, and this is kind of where the magic happens, if you wait until you're 30 to start saving, and you can consistently save from age 30 all the way until 65, and you can save 25% of your gross income, when you get to age 65, you'll be able to replace 100% of your pre-retirement income. That's it. That's where the magical 25% number comes from. It allows someone who saves for a 35-year period to replace 100% of their income when they get to retirement.
When I look at these charts, I get so jealous of all you 20-somethings that have discovered this show, because you can see, truthfully, anybody under 30 who discovers this content, discovers that their army of dollar bills can be more powerful than their brains, their hands, their backs. Guys, you got a lot of grace. So don't get jealous if you look at, you got some peers that are a little bit older, you got siblings, you got aunts and uncles, you go, man, I wish I had what they have. You could. If you are discovering this content and you're under 30 years of age, I want you to see how powerful every dollar that you save, that you don't spend, can be if you just engage it to start working for you. It's really, really amazing.
So if you continue to wait, if you wait until age 35 and you save 25%, you can still replace almost 80% of your pre-retirement income. And if you wait to start saving until 40, you can still replace almost 60% of your pre-retirement income. We all know that sometimes life happens, right? We don't know what the next 5 years or 10 years or 15 years will look like. So the earlier you can figure this out, the earlier you can start saving 25%, the more options you're going to give yourself later in life. And for me, someone who's now been tracking my net worth for over a decade, it is amazing to look back and see the amounts that I was saving in the mid-2000s and what they've turned into now. It is remarkable. I'm so glad that my young 20-something-year-old self figured that out. And so if you start tracking your net worth annually, especially if you use the tool that we're making available to you, then you too can watch that happen as your net worth builds over the years.
So, Bo, we talk about savings / investments because we want to put this money to work. I don't want to spend it because it is a kind of an additional subject matter, but we need to tell people who don't know how to invest. How do you get into investments if you don't know anything about investing?
Yeah, so if you're someone who's just starting out, technology has made the world a lot easier. Rather than having to figure out, what do I buy, when do I buy, do I sell? It's become incredibly easy with target retirement index funds, where essentially all you have to do is figure out, what year do I think I want to retire? So if you think you want to retire in the year 2050 or 2055, you would buy the Target Retirement 2055 fund or the Freedom Index 2055 fund. Right now, while you're many years away from that, it's going to be more aggressive. And then as you move closer and closer to that date, it's going to naturally adjust and become more conservative for you. It basically takes all the work away from you. So there are only two questions you have to answer. When do I think I want to retire? And how much money can I save? Focus on those two things. And when you look at your net worth statement every single year, you're going to be blown away at how the numbers grow.
So that's the basic strategy on how you get started is how much can you save? When do you need it? There's a kind of an investment that'll do all the work by also leveraging the power of index funds. I do want to tell, because Financial Mutants, you're a curious bunch. You've probably noticed because we have, in addition to our net worth tool, we do have the financial order of operations. And a lot of you will maximize opportunities with your employer plans, with your savings, and go, by the way, I held this up briefly. Go to moneyguy.com/resources if you want to get this same free deliverable. If you need a deeper dive, you can go to learn.moneyguy.com. We actually have a really great course that will accelerate all this for you right there with the net worth template. So make sure you're checking those things out. And here's what I like after you start the process. You're going to find, after you start investing and building wealth, that you're going to have different buckets of money. You're going to have, like, your employer's going to offer you some free money, and you're going to be crazy not to maximize that free money. So that's going to be what's called tax deferred, the portion that your employer puts in, and then depending upon how you do it, whether it's Roth or whether it's traditional, it's either going to be tax deferred or it's going to be tax free, which means that the money you put into the Roth options, your Roth IRAs, your Roth 401ks, and 403bs, they grow completely tax-free. We call that tax-free bucket. And then the one that's very liquid in the long term that can be your bridge account for early retirement or investments into other things is your liquid after-tax money that's in an individual brokerage or joint account. A lot of times you need to know about these three buckets so you can know how you're going to implement your goals in the long term.
What I think is wonderful is one of the things that we've put on our net worth tool right there on the dashboard is a detail each year of where your tax buckets are. How much do I have in those tax-free investments? How much do I have in the after-tax investments? How much do I have in the tax-deferred investments? And when you do this annual exercise, it will inform as you go into the next year, where should I be placing my dollars? What are the most efficient places? What are the deficiencies I have in my financial picture that I ought to be aware of, that I ought to be thinking of? So when you do your net worth statement, or if you use the net worth tool that we make available, right on the dashboard every single year, you're going to be able to see exactly where each of your three tax buckets are.
Yeah, so that's we had somebody write in earlier when we were doing a live stream, and it seemed like they had all their money in traditional tax deferred. They had maximized. You would be able, if you're doing this annual tradition of updating the net worth statement, you would be able to see, hey, whoa, I mean, it looks like 80% of my assets are in this traditional tax-deferred account. How does that fit into my goals? I think this is going to be a great indicator so you know, hey, maybe I need to focus on not only diversifying the portfolio, but diversifying my tax buckets as well.
So most people get excited when they think about increasing their assets. They think about their savings rate, and they think about the investments that they are putting to work, their army of dollar bills that are growing. But you'll notice that's not all that exists on the asset side of the equation. We also have things like use assets, or maybe even things like illiquid assets that also can increase in value through time.
So let's talk about the use assets first.
Sure.
So this is the stuff that's going to be more common that a lot of people have, our houses. Now, look, you can do what you want with how you disclose your house on the net worth tool that we've created. But I do want to give you kind of a money guy hack.
Sure.
Because we're in an inflationary period, and a lot of you guys are experiencing tremendous asset growth on paper of the houses you live in. Here's the problem. Why do I keep saying the use assets, the house you live in, is that we all know if it got really ugly out there, meaning that you lose your job or you're having market volatility, you're still going to be so thankful you have a place to shelter your family, to keep them dry when it rains outside. It's hard to eat that house.
That's
and you're going to think, well, I've got all this equity. I've got 6 figures of equity. I'll just, I can go open a home equity line. Realize market downturns, they don't like to lend on that type of debt. Also, you lose a job. They don't like to lend to people who have lost their job. So a lot of times that money is illiquid because it's a use asset. You're going to live with it. So I always recommend, and we talk about this constantly, what Bo and I do, and you can disagree with this, but this really keeps things in check on our net worth statement. We value our use assets like our house at cost. We don't put market value on there.
Meaning what we paid for them when we originally bought them. So here we live in the suburb of Nashville, Tennessee. Are we understating our net worth?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Is that okay? Absolutely. Because when we look at our net worth statements, I don't want to see how much my net worth is increasing because of my house appreciation. As it relates to my house, the only number I care about is how much of that debt am I reducing. That's what I want to see reflected on my net worth statement, not a wild fluctuation that could be way up this year and way down next year and so forth, because I can't actually turn my house into cash very rapidly.
Now, look, I'll be devil's advocate. I'll say, look, some of you out there are thinking, you know what, I'm going to retire, and I'm in a high cost of living area, and I'm going to go retire in some other geographic location in America, and I'm going to, maybe even internationally, and that when I liquidate, I am going to use that capital, and that's going to be a part of my retirement. Congratulations, you have turned that use asset into now a liquid asset that will go into your retirement plan, and I will applaud that, and we can include that now as a liquid holding. But just be careful, because I have fallen a prey to this. I've fallen to this own trap. There's a lot of self-reflection in this. You don't want to have that you don't need cash reserves, or you don't need to, you can slow down on your savings because you're counting on, hey, my house appreciated $250,000 last year. Why do I, or over the last 3 to 4 years, why do I need to save more? That's a false sense of security because you're looking at paper gains versus what's really available.
Another use asset that shows up on our net worth statement that I think, in my opinion, is pretty frustrating are the things that get us from point A to point B every day. It's our automobiles, it's our cars. And you may be really, really excited thinking, oh, I bought this new car and I paid this much for it and I'm going to put on my net worth statement at that price. And that's great. What you're going to be shocked by is when you look at it next year and you go to Kelley Blue Book or you go to somewhere to check what the value is, you're going to see that that asset does not go up in value. It actually goes down in value.
It's funny, Bo. This is one of those things because you and I, we designed this template. We actually use this. This is, we use this for our own personal assets. But part of this is we had to go bring in. I brought in 15 years worth of data, and the starkest learning experience because it was fun on the asset side, seeing the investments go up over time, even in downturns, seeing well how well did I save? So maybe it stunted the losses during that market volatility. But all my good memories of all the vehicles my wife and I have had, because we update these every year. I go on Kelley Blue Book or I go on Edmunds and I value them, and it's depressing. I know we're in unique times right now because of inflation, that it's not happening as fast as in the past. But historically, you own a car for 4 or 5 years, and you're going to lose 50 to 60% of the value. And I saw that on my net worth statement, to see the cars that you were so pleased that you had accomplished and bought this car, and then to essentially watch it go from $40,000, $30,000, $20,000, and then by the end of the time that you're getting close to getting rid of it, it's $7,000. You're like, gosh, I remember when that thing was $40,000. It's kind of depressing. Meanwhile, every asset that you have on your investments over a long-term period, you're like, wow, I remember when I put $6,000 in that Roth and now it's worth this. You will quickly see that automobiles, they're not our favorite thing if you're trying to build wealth.
And look, another perfect example that falls into that category are furnishings, right? So the things that we own, that we utilize, maybe it's house decor, or maybe it's furniture, or maybe it's gadgets and toys at the house that we use on a day-to-day basis. It's okay to list those on your net worth statement. But remember, more often than not, those things are going to decrease in value over time. And again, if you really want to focus on how to grow your net worth, when you're adding to the asset side of your equation, you want to add appreciating assets, not depreciating assets, so much as you can control it.
So we just covered use assets. We've already covered kind of an investment, liquid assets. I want to talk about some of the illiquid stuff that's out there, because I think there are going to be financial mutants that are watching this content. They see the net worth tool and they'll see that we have a section for real estate.
Sure.
And real estate, what I'm thinking here is for those of you on the financial order of operations, once you reach step 8, I'm okay because you've done the basics of getting your retirement assets, the liquid assets, the emergency reserves. If you are choosing that you want to be, there's no such thing as being a truly passive real estate investor, but you decide you're going to start doing real estate, we have a section on the tool to use that. I just caution you, I love real estate. In a section under liabilities, we'll talk about the power of leverage, but it is one of those things that you just need to know how this fits into your financial goal list so you don't get your financial order of operations cattywampus and doing it in the wrong order.
You know, another thing that a lot of people overlook when they do their net worth statement, we're amazed by this. If you're a small business owner, or maybe it's a larger business, odds are that business has some sort of intrinsic value. If you were to sell it or if you were to get rid of it, you would probably recognize some value for it depending on the business. We always think it's wild when we look at someone's net worth statement, they have their checking account listed and their 401k listed and their automobile listed. And we say, hey, where's your business? Why isn't that on there? Like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's a huge piece of what comprises your total net worth. So if you do own businesses, even if it's a small side business, but it has some sort of terminal value, we think it makes a lot of sense to enter your business interest, your business assets on your net worth statement as well.